ComedySlamRadio.com. From our studios to the world, we bring you the finest in quality entertainment. So pop some popcorn, grab a smooch buddy, and settle in for another fine show from ComedySlamRadio.com.
It's time for the Let's Be Frank show, where we get frank with your favorite celebrity and national touring comedians. Follow us on Twitter at Let's Be Frank Show, and if you miss our live broadcast on Comedy Slam Radio, find us on Stitcher Radio, Podomatic, and iTunes at Let's Be Frank's Podcast. Keep laughing, my friends. Good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Let's Be Frank show with Dave Frank, Fat Davey, the special character of the evening. And tonight, I want to take a minute and thank Wally Collins for calling in tonight. How you doing, Wally?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right.
So it's a special day for me here. I just introduced my new intro, and tonight I'm going to introduce my new outro. I don't even know how much I like my new intro, but I hated the last intro I had, so I was swearing up and down and upset about the fact that I thought it sucked so bad. Right. So how horrible or good? What do you think of the new intro? Not the Comedy Slam, which is fabulous, but mine. What do you think? The new disco weirdo music?
No, well, to be honest with you, it's the first time I heard it, so it sounds great.
There you go. See, somebody else was just in here, and they're like, Dave, there's no inflection in your voice. And I didn't even think he knew the definition of inflection, but the person who said it. But he goes, you're too monotone. And I'm like, whatever, man, leave me alone. I like this one better than my last one.
That's when you look in the mirror, you get inflection.
There you go. And it's funny because I didn't know what to do for an outro. So I'm like, fuck it. Let's play the theme to The Incredible Hulk when he's walking away.
That's pretty clever.
And I'm just talking over that, saying, whatever, goodbye and all that. So we'll see how it goes.
That's funny.
Yeah, you got to do something. Something's got to be funny in case it's not me, although you're going to be funny, right?
Yeah, I'll try my best.
Well, actually, you don't have to be funny. You don't have to be funny. You're on because you're a funny guy. We don't often ask comedians to tell jokes, but sometimes just funny shit happens.
Yes, I believe in that.
So let's get into it, man. You've been in comedy now for a while. How many years are you in comedy?
Oh, man, since the early 90s.
Early 90s. So was that like, I'm about 40, so that's like fresh out of high school for me. Were you, how old?
Oh, yeah, I was just an embryo when I started. And, when I was born, I said, knock, knock. And he goes, okay, he's a comedian. It's a boy or girl? No, it's a comedian.
Well, listen, I know that is, although that is funny, it's not the truth because I watched and read a little bit about you, and it was kind of your mom's idea for you to start comedy, wasn't it?
Yeah, man.
You got to thank Big Mama.
Buildings.
Big Mama hooked you up with some good advice.
Well, you know what? Basically what they wanted to do, my parents, all they wanted to do was make sure that we were happy, no matter what. They wanted the kids to be happy. And so, I was designing buildings, and she just said to me, if you could be anything or do anything, what would it be? And I said, I'd love to be an actor. And she goes, well, why are you designing buildings if you want to be an actor? And I'm like, no one famous ever came from Springfield, Massachusetts. And she goes, well, you never know. And so I was like, hey, you're right. So I gave her an obstacle. I said, well, I don't know where to start. She goes, well, why don't you try doing comedy, because you're a pretty funny guy, and then parlay that into acting. And so I gave it a shot, and the rest is history. So
where did you go up the first time to do comedy? No, where did you start doing comedy?
I started in the Springfield, Massachusetts area. I started in the towns like Holyoke and Chicopee. It's in Springfield, West Springfield, all those areas there. And back then, they really didn't have comedy clubs. They had like comedy night, like a restaurant would have comedy, like, and Thursday's comedy night, or a nightclub would have like Tuesday's comedy night, that kind of thing, And so I kind of did like little mini tours, after work. I would jump in my car and, go to do, such and such club that had a comedy night that night, MC the club, MC it, or maybe do like a quick set or something like that.
So there wasn't any actual open mics or anything?
No, what happened was in this area, this is like when comedy was like booming in Springfield, and this producer named Mark Rossi, he wanted someone to MC the shows, and he would bring comedians from New York City, and so he wanted a local MC, and so I was the local MC, and so I would just basically tell me to go to, it's like from Thursday to like Sunday, I would MC these shows.
I mean, that's a pretty interesting start. I mean, normally
Right.
normally you're at an open mic night and you earn the right to become an MC.
Right.
So it's almost like
Right.
backwards, but that's good because it exposed you to more stage time faster.
Yeah. Yeah, and also too is that people there would be different acts. There would be like a middle act and a headliner, and it was the same guy, and it would be the same audience. So like I would have to change my act every 2 weeks or change my jokes around every 2 weeks. And because people are like, oh, we heard that kind of thing. So that helped. That I kind of got my chops, real quick and tried to develop material pretty quickly.
Yeah. You said how you had to change your act like every 2 weeks. It's funny because that's actually a testament to the place you're doing comedy at. There's a lot of comedy places down here you can go. There's some great places, and then there's just some average old hole in the wall comedy clubs. And
Right.
if you can ask, has anybody ever seen me before? They're going to say no because they've never been to that comedy club. And
Right.
others, anytime you say it, you see 2 or 3 hands or 4 hands because they keep coming back. And
Right.
it's a big difference. Sometimes I'm amazed at how different clubs operate and how there could be such a huge difference. Like you walk in and you're like, it just doesn't make sense that the doors are
Right.
open.
Right. Right. But it's the love for it, though. I mean, I love doing it. Just the fact that something that came out of my brain, and I'm staying on a microphone, and they're actually laughing at it. It's a high that you can't match.
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah.
I remember, when I first started doing comedy, I'd been in sales my whole life on commission, and I've talked in front of 10 or 15 people to sell products, but
Right.
it was different. I'm like, I think I need to amp up my game. I was like 38 years old and kind of felt like I was on a low level plateau, and I needed to amp up my game. And I said, you know what?
Right.
I'm going to try stand up comedy. And the very worst thing that could happen is I get laughed. I don't get laughed at, and
Right.
I never see any of those people again.
Right.
So
Exactly.
it was my kind of you never know moment.
You never know. There you go.
Yeah. Now tell us a
Right.
little bit because you're a big you never know guy. You are the
Well,
never know man.
What did you say?
You are the you never know man.
I am the you never know guy, right? You never know is encouraging people to live a regretless life. One of the saddest things, I do public speaking too, and keynote speaking about the whole concept of you never know. And what I say when I start out is that about 80% of people are not happy because they regret not living the life they dreamed for themselves. I mean, you can ask pretty much so basically that's 8 out of 10 people who are miserable, who get up every morning, to go to work wishing they're not doing that, and which I find crazy. And you never know is encouraging people to live their dream because it's that regret. That's like you don't want to say it. Your last days of your life saying, "Oh, I want to try this," and that's the key to happiness. Having a regretless life, doing everything you want to try. And if you have a passion for it, you should be doing it anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's funny because aside from the little bit of time in comedy, I've never been anything but a sales guy, really. I've just always
Yeah.
been in sales and always dealt with people.
Right.
And, it's amazing coming from sales. I think it helps me in comedy because you have to be so multitasking and have to have an attention span and be somewhat quick-witted.
Yeah, I mean, I think sales is probably the best way to kind of parlay into stand-up comedy because, you got to be quick on your feet. You got to be a people person. You can make it more conversational. You know how to draw a person in. If you really know you're making that sale, you know when to back off. You know when to attack. That's all techniques are part of stand-up comedy.
Yeah, definitely. And and I say, and everybody who's ever listened to the show knows that I don't brag by any means because I'm only 2.5 years into comedy, and
Right.
I'm definitely still an open micer. I probably don't even go to as many as I could because I work full time, and a lot of my comedy fix, I think I get out in this 1 hour a week on the radio show. because, I get to talk with great comedians all the time, sometimes celebrities, sometimes national touring comedians,
Right.
sometimes just local yokels, and we just get together and shoot the shit and have a fun time. So
Right.
it's such a great experience that sometimes I'm like, I'm not hitting an open mic this week. So I probably only get on stage myself like 2 to 3 times a month, and most likely most of it's open mic, but
Right.
I get the other gigs. I had a gig this last week for some nurses, so it was fun.
Right, right. I think you're in a good position too, man, because you're talking to people who've been there, done that, so they'll pretty much tell you, don't do that, or what not to do, the do's and don'ts of stand up, so that you skip over that step.
All right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're doing a great thing. It's a very smart thing what you're doing.
All right. So hey,
Yeah.
let's get frank. What's the worst experience you've had in comedy? Give us the frank story on it, man.
All right.
What was her name, and what was the disease that followed?
All right, I'll tell you. It was me starting out doing stand up. It was like a biker club in Connecticut, and I think it was Glastonbury, Connecticut. And I wanted to do comedy anywhere. Anytime there's a chance for an audience, I was a stage whore. Why lie? I was a stage whore, man. Like, I'll do it. And I got there on that stage, and it was like a platform. It was just a biker bar, and they had like a little platform, and they had like an incandescent bulb, and they had like remember those Mr. Microphones, those little like little speaker things, whatever. That was the stage. And so here's this black guy. For people who don't know, I'm a black guy, and and my name's Wally. And I don't speak necessarily, and I didn't grow up in the hood, so I'm not necessarily like a hood comic. And I'm a clean comic too, by the way. I don't curse at all on stage. So I'm getting up there, doing my jokes, and heckler. This guy thought he's funnier than me, and he's around his buddies, said something, and I came back, with something back at him, kind of like flattened him. His friend's like, "Oh, you got you, that kind of thing." So he figured he'd try something else and threw something else, like a little crack or whatever. And I, pretty much did the ninja thing, turned back around and put it right back on him. They were like, "Oh, we got you again 2 times." So he had nothing left, and so he dropped the N-word. He called me a nigger.
Oh.
And yeah, and so it got really weird. But that was the first time I'd been called a nigger, and it didn't affect me because I understand the definition of it, and so I kind of like giggled because I knew that's all he had, and he figured that if he called me that, I'll get upset, and then a fight will ensue or whatever.
Right.
But I was like, nothing. I know I'm not one, so now what?
Right.
And so I said, "What else you got?" So he pulled up his shirt and he had a revolver, and he tapped the revolver. And I go, "Okay, I guess you win this one." And I said, "Thank you, good night," and I walked out.
It's funny because I like how you say when he says the N-word and you're like, it just doesn't matter.
Right.
It's like I was hanging out at the pool one time by my apartment complex, and I know you guys can't even consider hanging out by the pool right now because it's like 31 degrees. But down here in Clearwater, we could still chill by the pool in November.
All right, well, yeah. Okay, we can chill by the pool too, but it'll be really chilly.
Yeah, your beers will stay cold.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the only thing that'll be cold.
So we were hanging out by the pool, and we're all drinking and having a great time. Right. And this one lady who used to live underneath, in the apartment underneath me, she starts arguing me and yelling, and we're just going back and forth. And she used to hate it. I'd stick my hand in her face and go, blah, 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 blah. That's all I hear when you talk,
Oh, wow.
So she gets all mad and crazy, and she's drinking. She's probably like 15 years older than me.
Right.
And she's like, "You know what, Dave? You're fat." And I was like, "Wait a minute." I looked to my 2 friends and I'm like, "How come you guys didn't tell me this?" Like, funny. What do you mean I'm fat? Shit. And she was just, "What are you going to do?" I thought she was going to fall down and cry.
Right. Yeah, when you take that away, man, and that's like when you're doing stand-up, when you're on stage and these people sometimes want to heckle you, when you kind of like, when you're not affected by it and you see how silly it is and the audience sees that you have that kind of control, it just deflates them and, and you're the king. and you can use that like in your everyday life. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
if it doesn't affect you, they got nothing. Because I mean, you could decide if you're offended or not. And it's like, no, you got nothing. And when people get that angry and they really try to find something to hurt your feelings, they're just a sad person anyway. So it's like, you know what, you get bigger problems than than
Absolutely.
you yelling at me, or you calling me fat or calling me a nigga. So I'm like, oh boy, all right, what else you got?
There you
Or
go.
even a fat nigga. Ooh, boy.
And there ain't that many of them. You don't see a lot of fat black guys out there. More so now since the destruction of the world and everybody eats fast food and doesn't have any quality of life.
Are you saying you don't see that? You do see it.
No, I see a lot more of it now than I did when I was growing
Yeah.
up. When I was growing up, again, I'm 40, so 20, 25 years ago, I never
Yeah.
saw a fat brother. It was like the magical, mystical unicorn that didn't exist. Everybody
Right.
was toned and buff, and then all
Really?
this.
Where do you live, man? Because I can.
I grew up
you
in
ain't by me.
upstate,
There's a lot of fat black dudes that walk around.
in upstate New York. There was not, everybody was just didn't exist. I don't know. And then I moved to Florida, and the world just got hooked on fast food, Facebook, and I don't know, porn. And they don't go out and they don't do nothing. And I see just as many fat black guys as I do a white guy. So
Yeah,
I
man.
am
It's,
okay with that. I figure fat is the most popular shape in America, and once the girls realize it, I am going to be like sought after.
yeah, you're the George Clooney of the fat people.
I don't do horrible with the ladies. I don't do as good as George Clooney. I can't pull no Stacy Keibler.
But don't worry about it, man. It's all gonna come around, like you said. When they realize it, you can be like, all right, single file, ladies.
There you go. Hey,
Everyone gets a taste.
you never know.
You never know.
So let's look. You tell your mom almost, it's like 20 something years ago, almost 20 years ago, that you'd rather be an actor. So you start in comedy. And I don't remember seeing all of the individual series, but you've been on Spin City. You were in Coyote Ugly.
Well, here's a fact. I was one of the original hosts on Comedy Central. In fact, I was the first African American host on Comedy Central. I had a show called Stand Up.
I have that a little bit down in my list to go on to, but that's cool. I like you. I was gonna say, do you feel like you've actually reached all of, within reason, all your dreams, or do you have you done enough acting, or do you want more movies? I mean, what's your goal?
You know what, man? I tell you, it's really interesting that you asked that question. Is that now that I started this company, it's like now I want to encourage the world, because yes, I've done things that I set out to do. I wanted to do a national television show, and I do stand up on Letterman, and I did that. I wanted to have my own television show. I had that. I wanted to do stand up, different parts of the world. I've done that. I've done I've done commercials. I've done like 30, 40 commercials, national, international, I've done film. I've done sitcoms. So it's like check. And then I realized, I have no regrets, and I'm a very happy person. And I realized that, I want the rest of the world to be happy. And so what's the secret? It's the key to it is having no regrets. And so now I want people to be happy too, and that's the secret, is having no regrets. Because something I learned, when you're happy, you want people around you to be happy. You don't want to be, you don't want to be hanging around people who are just depressed or just angry or mean, whatever. Like, sometimes you say, come on, just chill, man, relax. There's no big thing, no big deal. And so when you do that, it's almost like infectious, so to speak.
Yeah, like laughter. Like laughter.
Yeah, and
if one person laughs, they all do.
Yeah, and that's your world. That you want to be around people who are like-minded and who are happy like you are. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to affect the world, person by person, by being happy and just basically living a regretless life. And so when I set out to act, I knew I wanted more. And so when I was doing when I was acting, when I was doing these commercials, when I'm doing stand-up, I would get off stage or done, rap film or whatever. But I'm like, there's something else. And I found it, that I feel that I'm the ambassador of happiness. I want people to be happy. How can I do that? Just tell them, you know what, live a regretless life. That's the key.
So when you're out there, because you've done seminars and stuff for this,
Right.
you know, what is it? Is it an hour seminar where you talk about the
Right.
benefits? I mean, what's it
Yeah,
like? Because it's
it's different, but for the most part, I'm up there like for 45 minutes, maybe an hour, but most times 45 minutes, and then I kind of like do a little workshop, and I'll just tell people what I've learned. And in the book, I wrote a book, and the book's doing very very well, and they're developing a TV show based on the book actually.
that's awesome.
And so yeah, and so I just basically in the book it's just encouraging people to live their dreams. And in the book, if there's any obstacle that you have, there's encouragement in that book that's going to help you get over that obstacle.
There you go. What's the book's title and where can they find it?
Oh, you can find it on Amazon. You can find it at youneverknow.com. It's called the You Never Know Book of Encouragements. And people who are listening, You Never Know is spelled Y''N''EVANO. It's one word. You never know.
And leave the apostrophe out and add .com, and you go right to the
Right.
website.
Right.
And they could see interviews with you there and other people
Right.
that, almost like inspirational videos of things that other people have accomplished while using You Never Know.
Right. It's just it's a state of mind. It's a simple state of mind. It's not like you have to follow rules. It's like step number one. No. It's just a state of mind saying try it. That's all.
Yeah, and it's funny when I got approached to do the show here on Comedy Slam Radio, they
Right.
were like, "Hey, Dave, you want to do a radio show?" And it was
Right.
after doing just open mics for a year, and I guess just having a personality that the
Right.
people that were running the station at the time said, "Hey, we could do it." And I was like, I guess I can. Can I call it
Right.
Let's Be Frank with Dave Frank? And they were like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "All right, I'm in."
There you go.
And it was
Yeah.
funny because growing up, I never thought I'd be a comedian. I never really thought about what the hell I wanted to be aside from a salesman. My father was a salesman. It was just what I thought I was always going to do.
Right.
And they were always said, "Well, what if you were ever going to be on TV? What would you do?" I'm like, "I want my show to be called Let's Be Frank with Dave Frank," because I just always, from the time I was like early teens.
Right.
So I was like, "Oh shit, I guess this is
Yeah.
the time for me to." Holy shit, you never know when something's going to pan out. So and we
Right. So you have to try it. You have
Yeah.
to try. And the logo for You Never Know is a partly open door. Basically, that's inviting you to try. That means try. Go through that door.
absolutely.
And because any opportunity is not, there's never a locked door. It's just so simple. Go through the door. You never
Yeah.
know.
Sometimes you might have to hit the door a little harder, or if it's harder, just bash
It's
it down
so
and hope
simple,
it's not
yeah.
a solid oak wood door.
Yeah. Right.
Stomp your way in.
Right. It's there. The opportunity's there.
Definitely. You just got to get out there and try.
Yeah. That's it.
So right now, when you're doing comedy, and you do a lot more comedy in New York City, how much traveling around the country are you still doing?
I'm not doing as much as I used to because I'm working with a company, but I do a lot more corporate meetings. I host corporate meetings. I MC, sales meetings, like in resorts and things like that.
That's one of
basically,
the
I'm
things
there
I
for
hope
like
to get
a
into.
week. Hmm?
That's one of the things I hope to get into is being able to do that, hosting events,
Yeah.
emceeing, and charging $12,000 to come and stand up in front of people to deliver a speech because they're too pansy to deliver their own speech.
Right. And
It's
like
amazing.
I said, man, you have the chops, so you're pretty much halfway there. So
It's amazing how many people are scared to just talk in front of people, especially about stuff they know everything about.
well, they say that people rather die before they be public speak or speak in front of speak in front of people. So it's the most terrifying thing.
Yeah,
But
and I guess
so,
it is.
we'll
but
take it.
yeah, I'm happy to do it.
Right.
I don't know exactly how I would take the next step myself into getting more into the public speaking, but
Mhm.
I think for me I'd have to give up working full time so that I could really concentrate on full time getting educated enough into doing it.
Right.
And I don't think I'm not. I've made a lot of big jumps, and I've been hit in the face and knocked down a couple of times in life. And I'm like, I don't think I'm ready to just jump off the edge again and go nuts.
Man, if that's your MO, if you're the kind of person that definitely says, you know what, I'm gonna try it. You're not gonna change. You're definitely gonna do it. You're gonna quit your job sooner or later and pursue whatever you want to do.
Well,
I mean, because it took a big jump for you to to say, you know what, I want to do stand up comedy. A lot of people would love to do it, but they don't have the cojones to do it, and
yeah.
you're doing it. So I could see you, I could see like a year from now, 2 years from now, our next talk, and you're like, I told you, man, you can do it. You did it.
Well, it's funny. I work with corporate America, and I've had the opportunities to be able to transfer around. So with the company I'm with now, I've looked to see if there's some opportunities out in L.A. or Hollywood, and I almost had an opportunity. There was an offer on the table, and things just went awry. So you never know. I've thought about going out there because not that I don't think I'm necessarily a good enough comic at this point, but I can get better there. Just like I can get better where I'm at, and I can continue to have my regular job while I'm doing it. There's an advantage there. So I'm I'm trying to strategically plan it all out. In my mind, one day I'm going to be immensely popular and not just immensely huge.
Right. You say literally or just metaphorically?
Well, if I lose weight, I'm going to have to go on stage. I guess instead of being Fat Dave, I'll change my name to Extra Skin Eric.
What did you say was Fat Dave?
It's funny because I used to be like 140 pounds lighter and work out all the time. And then, I don't know, like depression, double cheeseburgers and stuff went on sale. It was all downhill.
Really?
It was like a 10-year spiral of hell and cheeseburgers.
That you fell in love, because when you fall in love, that helps too. That helps with adding on the weight.
That happened in like 4 years ago. That happened. It was funny. I had moved to Chicago and I met a girl and things were really going great. But it was weird. It was one of the first things I did was have to accomplish a fear. One of my fears was I didn't want to die saying I had never lived anywhere outside of the state of New York.
Okay.
So there was one or two opportunities that had come up, and I took one that moved me out to Chicago. At the time, I was in the manufactured and modular housing sales and financing industry. Right. So it took me out there. So that was the first, I was 34 or 35 at the time. And that was like the first time I felt like I was an adult, really. And it sounds funny, but I had always worked, and I worked in sales, but it was like the biggest thing I ever did was moving out of New York. And I was like, oh shit. And then 4 months later, I'm like, well, this job didn't work out.
Right. I'm like, but you did it though.
Yeah, I did it. And I was like, am I going to go home? Like, it was funny because I'll tell you the story. The guy, it was like a $500 million company, and it was very big, multifaceted in businesses, but they brought me in to manage one of their communities, and we're in the Hancock building in Chicago. Right. And we're looking out over I almost said the ocean, but over the lake. And this 70-something-year-old man throws his arm around me, and he starts telling me the story about how he built the company and all this craziness. And he sells me. I go home, and 3 weeks later, I'm packing my shit and moving out to Chicago. And it was done. I'm like, I'm going to manage it. I get out there. He never fired the current manager. I pull in, and I'm like, yeah, hey, I'm Dave, the new sales manager. And everybody's like face dropped. And I was just like, well, what's wrong? They were like, nobody knew. I'm like, well, where's the current sales manager? She goes, oh, she's going to be here in about 3 minutes. I'm like, that's great. They didn't have my apartment ready. Like I was like, listen, if I'm moving out, you got to furnish a place for me. I'm not taking anything. I picked my salary and the whole bit. So I go out there and I'm happy. I'm thinking things are going to be good. And then they just start making changes to it. So I'm like, you know what? This is bullshit. And I go in. I was probably 20 minutes outside the city. So I go into the city, and I go back up to the guy's floor on I guess he owned like the whole 13th floor, or I don't know, whatever the building was. I'm sorry, whatever level the floor was in the John Hancock building. But it was beautiful. So I go up into his office, and I'm like, you guys are changing the contracts on me. This is BS. And I throw my arm around him, and we're looking out over his lake again in his fancy office. And I'm like, I just don't think, I moved across the country on your word. Right. And he goes, you know what, Dave, you're right. We're not going to change anything. Everything's going to go the way, like we said. And I'm like, you promise? And he goes, yeah. So I turned to him, I shook his hand, and I said, fine, I quit. I'm like, I just need to know that I got you to admit that you were wrong. I was right. And now screw you, buddy. I quit.
Right.
And
So
that
what'd you
night,
do?
well, that night, believe it or not, somebody by the name of Joe, he owned another community. He called me, goes, I heard you quit your job today. I was like, who are you? And he goes, well, I own such and such company. Come and visit me tomorrow in Skokie, Illinois. I'm going to hand you a plane ticket. I want you to go visit a property in Florida. Tell me if you want to live there. I'm like,
Jeez.
okay. So I'm like, I never even knew Skokie, Illinois existed outside of movies. I'm like, that's a real town? I think it was Silent Bob went through there with, what's his face? Jay and Silent Bob went to Skokie, Illinois.
Right.
So I go
Wow.
there and he said, here's your ticket. Let me know if you want to move. And I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm like, this is what I'm making. He goes, I'll match the same thing. Just move down there and run the community. Needless
Nice.
to say, 3 or 4 months later, that job came to an end because the industry was dead.
All right. Well, you did it.
Yeah, man. And then I said, screw this. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving Florida.
Right. Right.
I said, I am going to rebuild. And I busted my ass and I wound up broke. And then I rebuilt again. I blew through
Right.
all my
Right.
savings because there was no way I was leaving. I was not going to be beat by the state of Florida and the economy. I refused to let it happen.
I hear you. I hear you. Nice, man. All right.
So it happens. That's what it is. If you don't have a little testicular fortitude or
Testicular fortitude. I like
hey,
it. Okay.
I stole that from Mick Foley, the wrestler. If he ever wants to come down and beat me up, I'll take that beating. But he started that. I give him props.
Give him props. All right. So what else is on the agenda here?
Tell us a little bit. Who are some of the favorite comedians that you've gotten to work with? Or is there any crazy stories? Maybe a famous comedian that you got to work with that was a big dickhead. You could be frank. It's just between me, you, and a few thousand people that listen.
Yeah, right,
No
right,
problem.
right. No, you know what, man? I haven't had the pleasure of working like any big comics who are dickheads, but I work with a lot of comics, big comics, small comics. I'm just trying to think of
A favorite, a
different stories.
memorable moment.
Well, I'll tell you. Okay, I'll tell you this. Franklin Ajayi, and I think a lot of comics don't know who he is. And for those who, it's like I look at comedy like jazz. You really got to know who these artists are. And Franklin Ajayi is one of the first true like stand-up comics, and he's my favorite.
Okay.
And I love his style. I love his cadence. And he's a musician too. I'm a musician too, and so you can hear his, so to speak, musicianship or his like instrumentation. Well, the way he structures his jokes is like a musician, and I always loved that. And so about 2 years ago, he was headlining in here in Manhattan, and I was like this groupie. Everywhere he was like doing like a little tour in Manhattan, different clubs in Manhattan, and I was like a groupie. I was just following everywhere he went, and I was doing a show where he was headlining the show, and it's one of those things where the people that you idolize or whatever, not only if they can say, hey, hey kid, you're funny, whatever, but if they do something that shows that they were listening, that's like the biggest compliment.
Absolutely.
So I do a joke about my wife. My wife is from the Dominican Republic, and my wife's very Dominican. And the joke I do is my wife is so Dominican she's batting .337. There you go. And so my wife was at the show, and at the end of his show, at the whole show, whatever, people are hanging out, whatever, and I wanted to meet him and meet my wife. And so I say, hey, I'm Wally Collins, this is my wife. He goes, oh, she's batting .337. So, you know what I mean? So that's like the biggest compliment, that you're on the right track. And if you can impress, so to speak, your idol, you're like, that's golden, man. That's like, I'm good. I got this. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So if there's stories like that, there's one right there. But no, I never met, I can't think of a comic who was like a dick, who was like, you see him in one